Hi there, my name is Lane Perry, and today I will be walking you through how to build a steerable robot. If you are a tech lab lead or even the assistant, if you are in a position where you'll be helping the students build these, I highly recommend you build your own in preparation, just because it is very different to build an actual robot versus just watching a video or looking at the instructions. So we have the materials. I highly recommend you build your own and follow along. So with that being said, let's go ahead and walk through the supplies. So each kit will come in a bag like this, one kit per student, and everything in here will be going towards one single robot. So in each kit, we have 2 TT motors. This is what the wheels will attach to make it spin, and then 2 wires attached to it, or 2 leads. These tips will sometimes break off, that's okay. So 2 motors, 2 wheels to go with the motors, a toothpick, which is kind of just more of a tool that we'll be using, about a 4-inch or so wire. Yours is probably black, so I tried to get that matched up. Battery holder, so this will hold 2 AA batteries. You'll notice that we have a lever here. This is kind of an on and off switch to basically engage and disengage, basically just completes the circuit. Whenever we're changing the circuit at all, you'll always want to make sure that this lever is disengaged. Ideally take out the batteries, but worst case scenario, make sure this is disengaged. A 3x3-inch piece of cardboard, 2 rocker switches. They will have these little pegs at the end of them. And finally, 3 double-sided foam tape. So this is everything that will come in your steerable robot kit. Each student will get one, all that's good. So keep in mind that each group of students will be 4 to 6 students per group or table. At each table, there are also other supplies that you will need to make sure are present. These will be shared, so just make sure that at least 1 or 2 are at each table. So first are wire strippers, a box cutter. This is optional, but again, this will come in handy. A pair of scissors, electrical tape, and each student will need their own 2 AA batteries. Thus, we are going to try and keep it as simple as possible. We are going to build the top part of the robot first, and then we will flip it over and complete all the wiring and everything on the bottom. Alrighty, so now that we have all the supplies taken care of, we are going to go ahead and start building our base. All we will need for the top is the 3x3 cardboard, the battery holder for the AA batteries, the 2 switches, and one of these double-sided foam tapes. And then the toothpick will come in handy. First things first, we're going to attach the battery holder to the piece of cardboard. So basically how this is going to look, we're going to have the battery holder secured in the middle, and then we will have both switches in front of the battery holder, like this. So to do that, it's pretty straightforward. Let's go ahead and peel our double-sided foam tape. We will just stick it on the back, sticking it kind of closer to the front, just to give these wires some room. Pretty basic. Then we will peel the other side, and we will just stick it right at the back edge. It's okay if it's not perfect. Nothing ever is. Next, we'll be applying the switches. So the O, 0, or the circle, it's for off. The line is engaged, basically. So right now, it doesn't matter if they're on or off. But I will say that the off switch, so the O, should be to the right. Just to keep it simple for students and honestly yourself. So we're going to go ahead and attach them right in front of the battery holder. The easiest way to do it is to just keep the piece of cardboard pressed against the table, and then you can kind of gauge where you want them. I wouldn't recommend putting them out here, so you should be able to just kind of press the pegs. So basically what's happening, I'm pressing the pegs in, and I'm creating that little indent slash little slit. It may not be perfect, mine aren't even, that's okay. Press those through. Just try not to bend it too much, but you'll want it enough through so the pegs are through the cardboard. And then do the same with the other one. So it should be pretty easy to get them through. If for whatever reason it's being finicky or weird, this would be an instance where you can use the box cutter to just kind of, poke through, just in case. So you have your switches in, and they should be through the cardboard. So you have finished the top of your base. So now that we're done with that, we will go ahead and flip it over. You'll notice that the cardboard kind of comes up here over the peg holes. And we want to make sure that those holes are clear for the wiring. So using a toothpick, you can either rip it off, press it down, kind of scrape it, but just whatever you do, make sure the toothpick can get through. And there you go. Now that we're flipped over to the other side, we're gonna attach the motors. To do that, we'll need our double-sided foam tape. For this, I'm gonna cut one piece in half long ways. We can now attach our motors. So for our purposes, the wires should be facing on the outside, and this little peg or nub, that will be on the inside. So I highly recommend you make it flush to the back of the cardboard, and then I would recommend going flush to the side or even slightly over, just to make sure that the wheel does not catch on the cardboard when it spins. So we will go ahead and attach. Try and get it as close as you can. It's okay if it's not perfect. Press that down and attach it. And we'll do the same for this one. So again, wires facing out, peg facing in. The other side. Pegs should be in line with each other. So it's okay if it's not perfect. We can now start wiring. So you'll notice we have 3 sets of wires. So we will also be using this extra black wire. You are welcome to cut down the wires. It can get a little messy, so if you would prefer to cut them down and use the wire strippers to kind of, access the metal part, that is totally fine. So we have A's on this side, B's on this side, switch A over here, motor A over here, motor B over here, and switch B over here. So when I refer to those, that's what I'm talking about. All right, so first things first, we are going to connect the switches. So basically what we're doing, we are creating a circuit that goes from one switch throughout this peg, through the wire, and then into that peg of the other switch. So to do that, we'll take our wire, and there is a little bit of wire exposed here, but that probably won't be enough. So I would recommend taking the wire strippers, and you'll want to use the smallest, the 24-22. Get that in here, and you'll clamp it, and then I found the easiest way is to just kind of pull apart, and it should come right off. Okay, see how more wire is exposed? And you'll be left with this little piece, so just go ahead and discard that. And you'll do it for the other side as well. You just want enough to be able to wrap it, wrap the wire around something, so you don't want to take off too much, but you can kind of use your best judgment. So now that we have stripped our black wire, we'll go ahead and attach it. So in the diagram, we are attaching these 2 inner pegs. So first, I'm going to weed it through that first peg, and you'll see it might take a couple tries. You'll want to wrap that peg or the wire around the peg. Make sure that it is connected, and we'll be able to tape that down to make sure that it has access, but that should be hooked around. Just to keep it simple, I like to kind of mirror what's happening. So through the other side, if this comes apart, so you'll notice there are multiple wires in a single wire, even smaller ones. So if those start to fray, that's okay. Just twist it like you're threading a needle. And this is why I highly recommend everyone tries it. So if you are helping, if you are one of the leads or even the helper, this is exactly why I recommend try it, just because you kind of learn what kind of mistakes could happen, what could go wrong. So once these are attached, you can put this wire down towards the bottom. Just to keep it clean, I like to tape down the wire. So you should have your first wire. Next, we are going to connect the motors to the pegs. On this side, we are going to take the black wire, and on this side, we're going to connect the red wire to the pegs. For this, I recommend cutting the black wire on motor B, and the red wire on motor A. just to keep it less messy. But let's go ahead and give it a try. So taking the red wire from motor A on the left, I kind of size it. So I kind of pull the red wire and kind of gauge how much slack you'll need. So I'll give it a snip. And I'm going to use the wire strippers. Then we are going to attach the red wire to the left peg of switch A. And toothpick might come in handy. Kind of fold it around. And then just make sure that it's making contact. Then we'll do the same thing with the black wire of motor B. So we'll measure it, eyeball it, cut it. Thread it through the right peg of switch B. And again, toothpick might come in handy. Kind of maneuver it around. Make sure it's making contact with the switch. It's okay if it becomes slightly unthreaded. That's okay. So now we have center wire, and then we have the black wire of switch B and the red wire of switch A. And last thing that we need to connect to the switches is the red wire of the battery holder. So this one is pretty straightforward. We can just bring it up to the switch. So this one is going to be connected to the inner peg of switch B. So the same one that this black center wire is attached to. So I will go ahead and cut that and do a similar. All right, so once you have this good and twisted, we'll be placing it through the center peg of switch B. So again, this is kind of why you may want to give a little bit more slack than this, just because of how taut it is. So just keep that in mind, because worst case scenario, you just tape it back down. But you get it through the peg, and once you get it through the peg, you can either, if your fingernail can get through it, otherwise I like to take a toothpick and help kind of bend it around. And again, it's okay if it frays, it just needs to be making contact. Once you have that down, go ahead and use your electrical tape to secure the wire. I know I switched to black. You can use whatever color, doesn't matter. The nice thing is that electrical tape sticks to itself pretty well. Once that is secured, the switches are completely wired. Last thing we need to do is connect the motors, batteries together, basically to complete the circuit. So the easiest way to do this, I have found, is to take basically the motor wires that have the square covers, or rectangular covers, put them next to each other, and basically just wrap. As long as all the metal's touching, it's fine. But this I've just found easiest. There was a cover on this. It looked something like that. Just pull it off, cut it, doesn't really matter. Just so you have enough exposed wire, and you're going to take the black wire from the battery holder and wrap it around the two motor wires. And you'll just wrap it around until it runs out, and make sure that's nice and secure. And to do that, we will take another piece of electrical tape. So a reminder, it might be helpful for one of the helpers to, or one of the volunteers to kind of keep a stream of electrical tape flowing, just in case, or if you want to prep ahead of time for that. And then just go ahead and cover it. It doesn't really matter how you cover it, as long as it's all touching and it's covered. This completes the circuit. And the last step we have to do is basically just attach the wheels. So we will tape down all these wires, but before we do that, I want to attach the wheels and explain to you why we want to tape down the wires. So first, you'll notice that in these wheels, there are kind of a little oval shape, and it should match this oval shape. So you just pop them on, they should click into place, and you should not see any of the white peg. It should just be flush. And you'll do the same with this side, so it doesn't matter if they're in line or not. And now we got our wheels. And if we turn it over, we've got our steerable robot. But first, let's go ahead and tape down this wiring. So the reason I say we want to tape it down is notice how these wires are touching the wheels. These wires will kind of slow down the wheels movement. So we want to keep these wires away from the wheels. So for me, I'm probably going to just have them go right across and down. So basically the way I'm going to do this, I'm going to kind of stick it around, or stick my finger down and kind of tuck these wires up and around. So it kind of creates a little circle. Kind of can also tell why we shortened some of the wires. So you don't have to cut the wires like I did. It'll probably save you some time, to be honest, just because you won't have to deal with the wire cutters as often, but it does look cleaner. So if you're falling behind, that is a step that you don't necessarily have to complete. It's going for function. So that gives you your steerable robot. I know my batteries are in. Your batteries should probably not be in, but go ahead and insert the batteries and then engage the battery holder. And you can go ahead and test it out. The way this is going to work is the right switch is going to engage the right wheel and the left switch is going to engage the left wheel. So if we engage the right switch and the right wheel, it should be pushing to the left, and if you push the left switch with the left wheel, it should push the right, and if you push both, then it should go forward. So let's go ahead and try it out. So I'll engage the right switch, switch go left. Yep. And if you engage the left switch, it should turn right. Yep. Another important thing, I have this mat just so it was easier for you guys to see the supplies, but this works best on a flat surface, so a flat, smooth surface. It works much better than it does on a textured surface. So let's try this again. If it starts kind of like this, like where it's kind of starting and stopping, there's a couple things that could be happening. So let's do some troubleshooting here. One of the first things I would check is make sure the wires are not touching the wheels. The second thing I would check is maybe try and pull up the electrical tape, make sure that everything is touching correctly. And then the last thing I would check is if you set this down against a flat surface. So for example, if I take my flat surface here and I put it against this, you might want to check and see if the wiring is touching the ground or if anything weird. So for this example, when it was just doing that, what was happening was that this zip tie was touching the ground. So see how that was touching the ground? So that can affect the movement. So I just kind of swung that back around, moved it out of the way, and that fixed it right up. There are a couple things you can test to make sure that it's working properly. So let's try that again. So left, there we go. Make sure right is still working. And then if we engage both, it should go straight. And there you have it. So again, I highly recommend you try this out. We have enough supplies for everyone to make their own, so I highly recommend you take advantage of that, just because watching it is different than actually doing it. So please keep that in mind. Last thing I want to demonstrate is just to reiterate how to cut the wires. So first I will use the smallest, so the 24-22, and I'm just going to place the wire in there and pull. And you'll see the cover comes off, and then you're left with the bare wire. So again, if this frays, that's okay. Just kind of twist it like you would thread a needle, and you should be good to go. If for whatever reason you're having a lot of trouble, you can kind of cut a slit in the wire ahead of time. Just kind of give you a head start, but it might be beneficial. So you can use either one, it just kind of depends on the wire. So you can use the smallest one or the second smallest one. It might be helpful to practice using these ahead of time, just because the students, they probably will have never used these before. So this will be a new tool for them, and it'll be much easier if it's not a new tool for you. But if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. And with that, that is the steerable robot. I look forward to hearing all your questions. Happy robotics.